Someone is going to prison today after Democrat Party officials were busted in a bribery scheme that cost taxpayers over $125 million. Democrat officials claimed that they were taking taxpayer money to improve safety at schools in Dallas. Instead, the money was used to buy things like expensive cars, art, jewelry, a luxurious home, and other items. Also, other details like how they used a dog's name as part of their attempt to hide these donations to Democrat officials. The former superintendent of Dallas County Schools has a new home in federal prison over his involvement in helping local Democrats run this scheme to defraud taxpayers. Rick Sorrells started crying as he apologized in front of a judge inside a federal courtroom where cameras are not allowed. He could have apologized directly to taxpayers right there on the sidewalk after his sentencing. Mike Williams, another Dallas County School employee, criticized Sorrells, saying the least he could do is stop and say, "I'm sorry," or say the things he said in court, but he wouldn't even say that. He just drove off. That's what happened during the sentencing date a couple of months back before Rick Sorrells actually reported to prison today. During the sentencing, he starts crying in front of a judge, but he refuses to actually apologize properly to taxpayers in public. With this news of Sorrells reporting to prison today, he becomes just the latest to go to prison over this same scandal. Another Democrat mayor, Dwayne Caraway, also took bribes in the same scandal from an undercover FBI agent. He's currently in prison. There's a lot of unusual details about the whole case, but we can start with the most recent update on Sorrells checking in to federal prison this week to begin a 7-year sentence for wire fraud. It's the result of his admitting to taking more than $3 million in bribes while leading DCS, and the scandal cost taxpayers much more than just that $3 million. Sorrells was one of the key players in a camera buying scam that drove the school agency into financial ruin and sent others to prison, including former Democrat Dallas Mayor Dwayne Caraway. Caraway, like Sorrells, also admitted to taking bribes to help accommodate a company that was claiming to make school buses safer by equipping them with millions of dollars worth of surveillance cameras. Once considered a strong prospect to become Dallas mayor, this Democrat, Caraway, is now serving more than 4 years in federal prison. The conspiracy cost taxpayers tens of millions of dollars and convinced voters in a special election to shut down the DCS after 172 years in existence. At the height of the conspiracy while running the school agency, Sorrells was living high on the hog with fancy cars, a nice house, and lavish travels, including a luxury condo in New Orleans' French Quarter. Sorrells is one of more than 2,500 inmates currently at the lockup facility. Has an 8-digit inmate number. So this Dallas County Superintendent going to prison today for this scandal, just months after this Democrat Mayor Dwayne Caraway also went to prison over the same scandal. As part of this investigation, an IRS investigator said that Caraway took about $50,000 in bribes from an undercover FBI agent posing as a low-income housing developer in 2017. The FBI eventually raided the Democrat mayor's house in 2018. He then pleaded guilty to wire fraud and tax evasion charges that year, also admitting to taking money from the same businessman that is involved in the case in exchange for actions related to the school bus camera program at DCS. He was sentenced just a few months ago to more than 4.5 years in federal prison. This other article from last year, as the case was still developing, talks more about the businessman Robert Leonard Jr., who was central to this whole scheme. It also covers other weird details like how they used this dog's name to cover up donations to these Democrats. Article opens saying fast cars, fast money, and expensive art provide the backdrop for a seedy tale of corruption in Dallas. A slick Louisiana businessman paid off public officials to get lucrative contracts so he could live a lavish lifestyle, and everything was funded by taxpayer dollars. Report takes a closer look at the bribery conspiracy that led Dallas Mayor Dwayne Caraway, a Democrat, to resign after he pleaded guilty to federal corruption charges. This businessman, Robert Leonard Jr., also pleaded guilty. Leonard was living large with a luxurious home, a shiny black Bentley in the driveway, more than $700,000 in bank accounts, and boxes of expensive jewelry. He then had to forfeit his riches to the government because he paid for it with your money. Leonard peddled his company's school bus cameras in exchange for bribes, and many of the cameras are sitting unused in a warehouse. His dog got in on the act too. Leonard used his dog's name to make a $200 donation to this Democrat that went to prison the last few months. His former Mayor Caraway. Leonard made this $200 donation to Caraway's campaign using his dog's name, Jack Leonard. His dog, Jack Leonard, had a business card for Force Multiplier Solutions that listed him as Executive Chief Officer of the Dog Division. Caraway admitted to taking $450,000 to buy fancy suits, gambling trips, a campaign bus, and other items. It started when Leonard came to town, saying that his surveillance cameras would keep students safer. Leonard then went to Rick Sorrells, the then superintendent of Dallas County Schools, who's just reported to prison today. The bus agency had to shut down amid the scandal. Before its closure, Dallas County Schools provided services for school districts and government entities in Dallas County and throughout Texas. Sorrells admitted he received more than $3 million in bribes and kickback payments. In exchange, he entered into $70 million in contracts for cameras from DCS school buses. Caraway's position on the city council helped garner the votes that made the scheme possible. A local expert on the case added, quote, "I think Mr. Leonard and Mr. Smartwood, who was his agent in all of this, did not have to be smooth. They didn't have to be smart talkers because they had cash in their pockets. It was that cash that was irresistible to a surprising number of Dallas political officials." Describing the operation as one of the biggest corruption scams in Dallas history. They've also suggested that the use of the word others in government documents suggests more people may have been caught in the FBI's dragnet. The FBI gives some more details in another very recent article just from the past few days. Final article here. One FBI special agent who investigated the case out of the FBI's Dallas field office said, quote, "They needed an ordinance to ticket drivers who were caught passing the camera. Caraway was instrumental in making that ordinance happen. He accepted bribes to continue the program." He added that the investigative team used a combination of human sources and financial analysis to unravel the network of bribes. Ultimately, the taxpayer-funded transportation provider paid the camera manufacturer $70 million for the cameras. Force Multiplier continued to pay, even though the cameras were bringing in less revenue from illegal school bus passing violations than they cost. According to court documents, the program caused, quote, "significant and ultimately debilitating debt for the transportation provider, which eventually closed due to that debt, forcing schools to find another transportation option for students." Quote, from the special agent on the case says they just kept using taxpayer funds as a piggy bank. It had a huge impact on the community. Thousands of people were affected by this corruption. Dallas County Schools collected property taxes to purchase these stop-arm cameras for its fleet of about 2,000 buses, shut down in November of 2017 and saddled with approximately $103 million in debt. Force multipliers Leonard, this businessman central to the whole scheme, was sentenced on May 15th to 7 years in federal prison. He was also ordered to pay $125 million in restitution for his role in the bribery scheme that took down multiple public officials. By peddling these bribes and kickbacks, Leonard undermined Dallas's trust in its public officials, and in bringing him to justice, we hope to restore citizens' faith in the system, said a U.S. attorney in the case. Went on to say, quote, "As I've said repeatedly over the past year and a half, the U.S. Attorney's Office will be relentless in its pursuit of anyone involved in bribing public officials, from bribe recipients to bribe facilitators to bribe payers. The citizens of Dallas deserve integrity from City Hall." Final quote from the same attorney says, "Over the past year and a half, the Northern District of Texas has been relentless in rooting out public corruption, and we will continue to prioritize corruption cases. This case should serve as a warning to public officials across North Texas. If you betray the trust of your constituents, we will prosecute you. We'll prosecute the bribe payers, and we'll prosecute those who attempt to conceal bribe payments. Anyone who fosters a kickback culture, prioritizing financial interest ahead of constituent rights, will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." So another public official going to prison. If you could leave a like on this video, it's greatly appreciated, and subscribe to the channel. Tell me what you think, and I will follow up soon. Thanks, everyone. The latest update from today: former superintendent of Dallas County Schools reports to federal prison. Rick Sorrells